Welcome to Knife Thoughts. This video is just going to be a comparison between some of the different characteristics of these two Sebenzas. So these are both Chris Reeve knives, Sebenza 31s in Magna Cut, but they've got some differences that I just wanted to do kind of a quick comparison video about. So I got this knife first, and I actually had been waiting for a long time for the plain Insingo blades to come back in stock, specifically at Knives Ship Free. Got both of these there, and I recommend you check out Knives Ship Free if you are looking for a Chris Reeve knife. But I got this one first because these were just taking a long time to come into stock, and I wanted to get one to celebrate a milestone. And so I got this knife, actually had to send it in to Chris Reeve shortly after getting it because it came slightly off center. They tuned it up and it came back to me. I really loved it. Have carried it a lot since then, and it has gotten really smooth, really broke in. But then these came back in stock at Knives Ship Free, and I decided I wanted to jump on it. Now, I did an unboxing of this knife, and as I mentioned in that video, I never would have thought that I'd be someone with more than one Sebenza, and truthfully, I don't really plan to keep both of them permanently. It's just a lot of money for me tied up into knives, and of the same model, right? I don't really do a whole lot of having the same model, even in my traditional knives, even in my gradation cutlery knives. I only have a few different patterns that I have, more than one of the pattern, and really only that I can think of one or maybe two, depending on what you kind of consider, where I have the same model twice. So it's just something I don't do a whole lot of, particularly on really expensive knives. But I wanted to compare some things. So another reason that I decided to get this one is that this is the truly like the plain base model with the single right-handed thumb stud, and this one that I originally got is the gold hardware and double lug or two thumb studs version. And so generally I think people recommend getting the two thumb stud version. And that's because as one person in the Peter, actually I believe it was, in the Barlow Bearcat said, you never know when you're going to have to open the knife with your left hand. And that's true. It is nice to be able to open it with your left hand without much trouble. But what I found was when using this knife, I'd often be kind of choking up like this and feel that thumb stud really digging into my knuckle. So particularly like cutting food for my son and things like that, not so much any like harder cutting tasks, but just things where I was choking up, I would feel that. And I wanted to see if I would prefer without that thumb stud, that second thumb stud. And then the other big thing again is the blade. So this is the drop point blade, kind of the most classic. And then this is the Insingo, which I think is probably the more recommended. So I want to talk first about the thumb stud. So it is nice to be able to open with your left hand with a normal thumb roll. So just like so, it's relatively easy to open. I do find sometimes that I think I'm putting pressure on the lock bar and it makes it a little bit more difficult to open. And then also there's not as much of a relief there. So there's less space to get in on the thumb stud. But you can definitely open it with your left hand. Now, another thing that the second thumb stud, the back thumb stud allows for is a middle finger flick, like so. But I find it's easier if you have a longer fingernail, and I generally have to keep my fingernails pretty short. I teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and you don't want to be scratching people. If you don't have a longer fingernail, you have to get kind of the meat of your finger up under there. It's not super easy. And honestly, it's not like a super practical thing either. There's not any great reason to do that. But as you can see, you definitely can do it. I can get up under there and flip that open pretty easily. Of course, it's fun, it's fidgety and all of that, but just not super practical. Now, that said, with the single thumb stud, you can open it normally, do your slow roll or your flicking out with your thumb, and then I can choke up and really get a good close pinch grip holding on like so without it digging into my finger, and I do find myself using it that way. So I do appreciate that. I think that it definitely, you know, feels better in use, right? Actual use. I think a lot of times in actual use, you use more of a pinch grip anyway. Now, the other thing that I noticed is, speaking of the middle finger flick, if you do need to open the knife in your left hand, one thing, you can just push it a little bit with your middle finger and open it like so, or you can go ahead and get the middle finger flick going. Now, it's a little bit awkward because I'm kind of blocked by my my filming setup here, but you can definitely open it with the middle finger flick on your left hand. My left hand's not as dexterous as my right hand and everything, but you know, it's certainly possible. So for me, the times that I have wanted, and I won't even say needed, but wanted, I guess, to open the knife with my left hand, I can think of like one, maybe two, possibly three. Whereas the times where I use it like this, holding like this, is a good number. So I do think I prefer the single thumb stud, but it's something where I think I could go either way with it. It's not a huge deal. I think that the double thumb stud probably looks better and gives you the kind of fidgetiness of the back flip as well as opening left-handed. But the single thumb stud is better in actual cutting if you're going to use this pinch grip. Interestingly, I had a different Barlow Bearcat member, I believe it was Mike, said the same, that they got an Inkosi, which has the double thumb studs, and they didn't like how it dug into their finger. So that's one of the big differences. Now, the other difference is the blade shape, and I really expected the blade shape difference to be a little bit more, I don't know, a different experience than I was expecting, than I had. I was expecting a different one than I had, basically. So I really like the look of the drop point. I think it is about as classic looking as it gets. It just looks like a knife to me. I really, really like how it looks. It looks very, very classic, just like a knife. It also has a nice, solid, you know, kind of strong seeming tip. It's not a super thin tip. And so, you know, you probably have a little bit more tip durability. And I also like how it's rounded the whole way down. It just gives it a kind of a premium look and feel to me. And so, you know, you have a good looking blade. It's going to cut well here, but honestly, it doesn't cut as well. It seems to me, in my use so far, like the drop point just doesn't cut as well as the Insingo blade. And a weird thing here is that if you look at the heels, you can see that it's actually thinner and a good bit longer of a heel on the Insingo. Now, I've sharpened this knife, but I've only sharpened it like 2 times, like an actual sharpening. So I don't think it's from that. I think that's from the factory. And then another thing is you can see the grind on the Insingo actually sits lower. You can see that ricasso there, or the grind line, the plunge line, is higher on the drop point than on the Insingo. I don't know what the reason is for that. Maybe this edge comes up a little bit higher, something like that, but just a difference that I have noticed. And so speaking of the Insingo, it does seem to cut better. It seems slicier. You can see that the grind on the Insingo kind of curves with the edge, whereas the grind on the drop point goes straight a little bit more. So I think it's thinner the whole way, really, but particularly towards the tip. Apparently I left some stuff on here, but particularly towards the tip. Now, one thing that a lot of people seem to like about the Insingo is this swedge. The swedge, honestly, I think it looks good, but practically I can take it or leave it. It comes to kind of a false edge, and I haven't found a use for it. If you maybe need to scrape something, you could, I'm not sure, but I haven't really found much of a use for it. And what I have found is it actually has a little bit of a lip on both sides, really. So I might try to kind of take that edge off a little bit. I don't want it to be, you know, particularly sharp. And so the swedge, I think, looks good, but isn't something that I'm going to really use. Now, this knife has broken in also. It is mostly drop closed. It's not quite as smooth as my drop point yet, but has broken in pretty nicely. And I did take the blade out and kind of clean out the washers. I don't really like the fluorinated grease. It seems like people on like Facebook and stuff think it's great, but it seems like it traps dust and dirt and stuff, so I don't prefer it. So I cleaned it out and just put mineral oil in, and it seems nice and smooth, as you can see. So those are really just kind of the differences that I wanted to talk about with the thumb stud and the blades. You know, if I were to give a recommendation, honestly, I don't know yet which I would recommend, blade shape wise or thumb stud wise. So it's something where I think it's going to be personal preference, and you should just go with what your gut feels on these. You know, if you decide to get rid of it, you generally can without losing too much money. It seems like, I'm not an expert on the resale market, but it seems like you can sell them without losing too much money. And certainly you can get it, you know, spa serviced, and it'll be like new, basically. So both knives that I really like. It's a really tough decision for me to decide which I prefer, and I haven't completely decided yet, but I do think I will not keep both. I probably will keep this one and maybe try to trade this for an Inkosi, do a comparison between these, and then maybe decide which one to keep. But it's been unexpected that I've had the opportunity, or made the choice, I guess, to check these both out, to own both of these. And I hope you have enjoyed the video. If you have, I'd love to hear your thoughts below in the comments. Make sure you check out my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife-related topics. If you want to get a Sebenza or any Chris Reeve knives, again, I suggest checking out Knife Ship Free. I have a link below in the description for that. Make sure you subscribe to my emails on my website, which again, you can find the link to that in the description. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.